Welcome back to the Discount Property Investor Podcast. Our mission is to share what we have learned from our experience and the experience of others to help you make more money investing like a pro. We want to teach you how to create wealth by investing in real estate the Discount Property Investor way. To jumpstart your real estate investing career, visit freewholesalecourse.com, the most complete free course on wholesaling real estate ever. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, guys, welcome back. Dave and Mike are here to talk about how to do double closings. We get questions a lot, actually, from people that send us messages and they say, hey, this wholesaling thing sounds awesome. How does the double closing work? Or how are you guys able to double close? So this is actually the strategy and the method in which we're able to flip properties with little to none of our own money. So how is it possible for me to go buy a house for $200,000, or in this case, lock it up with a contract, and then sell this property with maybe only $10 or $50 or $100 of my money, right? In some cases, none of my own money, right?
It's cool.
It's very cool.
It's a really cool thing to do.
Very cool.
This is the thing that, I guess before I learned it, I just always remember like hearing about this on the late night infomercials and being like, oh, that's so fake. Like nobody does this.
Yeah.
Like, nobody can,
that's such a good point.
It's such BS. Like you can't buy a house without any money. Well, you can. And we do it all the time. Yeah, I mean, we've got so many cool ways that we buy houses without using our own money. It's just fun. The double closing is one strategy. Now, this is really implemented in our wholesale business, double closings, right? Because we're not actually going to own that property long term, but we are going to flip it.
Yeah, we just control it. We control it.
Right. So what is a double closing, Dave? Let's just describe it real quickly.
Yeah.
And then we can talk more about specifics of how to do it, how to line it up, all that stuff.
Got it. So the double closing is typically facilitated by a title company or a closing attorney. And what happens is you line up your A to B contract with your B to C contract. So I'm going to dive into that and explain that a little bit more here. But essentially, you go out and find a motivated seller. You're a wholesaler, right? Put yourself into our shoes. You know, you're a wholesaler, so you go out and you find a great deal on a property and you get a contract on it. So now you have control, okay? You then market that contract to purchase that property, right? Some people will say, well, you got to market that property. That's fine, but really you're marketing that purchase contract. And let's say that you find a buyer and they're willing to buy it from you, right?
Let's make it real.
Do
Okay,
it.
so you listener found me and I am a motivated seller.
I love it.
Okay, so I am A and you are B. Okay, so you as the wholesaler are B and I am the seller A. So you get that A to B contract. We now have a contract in place where I'm selling to you at a great price because I say I just need to get rid of it. I don't have the money to fix this house up.
I got relocated from my job. I'm moving next week.
I need to get rid of this today. Today. Can you buy it today? No, sir. I'm going to have to go through a title company.
But I can do it in a week or two.
It's going to take me about a week. All right. So you say, awesome. So we lock up this $100,000 house, or you do, with me for $50,000 because, shoot, man, the roof's shot. It needs a new bathroom. Everything needs updating. But again, it's structurally sound. You got this property at a great price, $50,000. So that's our AB contract. That's your AB contract.
Okay. Now you tell Mike that you're going to close on, I'm just going to throw a random date out, March 23rd.
Okay. So I say, great, March 23rd.
That's in a week or two from now.
I'm going to be busting on out of here because I got a new job. I got to go. All right. Now you, as the wholesaler, then you start marketing this property and you find Dave. All right, Dave, what are you doing?
What was the price? $50,000?
I've got it for he's got it for $50.
Yeah, our listener has it for $50. So they marketed it for $60, $65,000. I come in, I say, hey, this has still got a lot of meat on the bone at $60,000, right? I'm going to pay essentially $10,000 over what you're willing to pay. And you say, okay, great, send me a contract. So now I'm going to send you, the listener, a contract for $60,000. You, the listener, already have a contract to purchase this property from Mike at $50,000, right? You then take both of those contracts to a title company or a closing attorney. You line them up, right? You have the closing dates on the exact same day in the future, right? What we say, March 23rd?
March 23rd.
That's the date we're going to be closing. So as long as I'm okay closing on March 23rd with you, the listener, and you, the listener, have talked to Mike, the seller, who's willing to close on March 23rd. Great. We've lined those up. March 23rd comes around. I show up to the title company to buy this property, and I bring in $60,000 in cash, or a cashier's check most likely, or a wire, and you are going to do a double close. So you're going to purchase this property with my money, essentially, and then you're going to sell it to me. You're going to use my money. Some areas, some states, some title companies, some attorneys may require transactional funding. Where we live, we don't have to deal with that. We can actually use the end buyer's money. So look in your own area to determine what the rules are. But essentially, that's a double close. Now, you're going to be closing twice, hence double close. Therefore, you are going to have double the costs. So that's one of the advantages of using an assignment, which is another way to do a wholesale deal.
Well, here, Dave, before we get into that, let's talk more about the double close and the specifics of the double close and how to do a double close. Because I know you out there, as the B wholesaler, are wondering, well, wait a minute, what if the buyer and the seller meet? Aren't they going to be mad? Aren't they going to be pissed off at the title company? We're all sitting around joking, and they say, hey, I'm paying $65,000, and I'm sitting there only getting $50,000. Aren't they going to be pissed off?
Nope. And
no.
That's because the double close typically doesn't happen right at the exact same time. They happen an hour later, 2 hours later from each other. I mean, essentially, sometimes we'll even have the buyer and the seller come in, but they'll sit in different rooms. So we can do a simultaneous close, but they don't know. Like, what's on the first sale agreement is between me and that person. And what's on the second sale agreement, where I'm buying it, is between me and you as the listener here, right? So they don't. That's a great point, Mike. They don't ever know until, maybe later they will, but it doesn't matter because you're solving problems. Right. You're creating a win-win, and that's what matters.
Right. So they don't have to.
They don't have to.
So, well, wait a minute, but do I have to schedule all this? Do I have to coordinate all this? Do I have to do? No. So you as the wholesaler, what Dave was talking about was lining up those contract dates. That's important. It's important that everyone is on the same page, kind of around the same closing date. But then you bring it to the title company and you tell the title company, here's what I'm doing. I'm buying this property and I'm flipping it on the same day. Can you help me facilitate this? And if it's an investor-friendly title company, a company that's dealt with wholesaling real estate in the past, they're going to know what to do. So you want to find a good title company that's done this before. Listen to other guys in your area who are wholesaling. Talk to other wholesalers. Find out where they're closing deals, because that title company is going to know what's going on. Not all of them do it. Not all closing attorneys do it. They just aren't familiar with the process. So you don't want to be educating the title company. You want to find a title company.
Find one that knows this.
That can help you do this, especially when you're new to it.
That's such a good
point.
When
you've done it 100 times, then sure, you can probably work with any title company. They'll figure it out. You can help them do it.
Help them do it. But in the beginning, let them help you.
Exactly. And they will help you, and that's the whole point. You don't have to talk. Again, you should be in communication with your seller and your buyer, and you should be kind of figuring out who's closing when. Typically speaking, it's going to make things easier because your seller, the motivated seller, they usually want a check. They usually want that money when they're signing. They want it right away. So it's going to make it easier if you try to get those funds to the title company prior, meaning you want your end buyer to close first. So again, that's going to make it a little bit easier on you.
Because then the seller can leave with the money.
Exactly.
Otherwise, they're going to have to come back and pick up a check or wait for a wire or get it in the mail. Again, not the end of the world. I mean, typically we try to tell, our seller, we're going to close on or around this date. That way, if it doesn't happen on that exact day, they're not coming back at us being like, hey, what the hell's going on? Instead, we just say, hey, we're going to shoot for this day. But if our buyer needs another day or 2 or 3, that way we're not, being transparent helps a lot. And that's really, I think, the point that I'm trying to make. But
yes,
the question that we get over and over is, how do you double close, or how do these double closings work? And really the simple answer is you get 2 contracts, one to purchase the property and then one to sell the property. Or another way to look at it is you have one contract that gives you the ability to control it, and then another contract that gives you the ability to sell that control. And that's it. That's really what it is. And then you take those to a title company or a closing attorney, and it's really their job to schedule these things and make calls to the seller or the buyer or whoever and make sure that they have all the paperwork that they need, which is typically just some information, a social security number, maybe some LLC docs or an EIN number, but they are going to help coordinate. Now, they may reach out and ask you for some information, so you want to be there to assist them, but just understand that you are paying them to facilitate and close this transaction. So really, it's their job to do so. They may need your help. contacting a seller or a buyer or getting an address or an email, but that's about it. Typically what happens is they take over and they make those calls and they schedule those times for them to come in. What am I missing?
Well, and a lot of time, I'm just going to keep with that thought process. It's not your business. If the property is owned in an LLC, they're not going to ask you for the LLC operating agreement documents. It's not your business how that buyer or seller has their stuff set up.
And how they settle it.
You've got a contract to buy and sell. So the title company then gets that information. That's their job. You're paying the title company to do this. Their job is not just, again, facilitating this close. It's figuring out all these legal things that have to happen in the background to make sure that, again, you got a clean title transferred and money transferred. They're an escrow agent, essentially. So they're making sure that everything is transferred, recorded correctly for you, for your seller, for your buyer. It's one of the reasons we use title companies, in addition to the fact that we're able to do some of these double closes a little bit more creatively. So
absolutely. So, Mike, I mean, questions are coming to mind already from just what we said and put out. I'm already thinking about the people that are going to respond back with questions. So I'm going to put myself in the shoes of our audience, and I'm going to just ask you questions, right? So, okay, cool. Hey, Mike and Dave, that sounds great. What about the liens on the property?
Exactly. And that's what we were just touching on, is that that's why we use a title company.
Who pays the liens?
So liens are recorded against the property or the owner of the property, and they're cleared at closing. What does that mean, cleared at closing? It means they come out of the seller's proceeds. So in our previous example, if I had a $2,000 tax lien that was on this property and a $1,000 sewer lien on this property, the title company should find those things.
That's their job.
That is their job. So when they see those liens recorded, I have to pay them. But I don't have to come out of pocket. It's going to come out of the closing proceeds.
You as the seller in this scenario.
So again, there's documents involved in this. So the document on my side is going to say, well, I sold it for $50,000, but I have to pay a $2,000 sewer lien, and I have to pay a $1,000 MSD.
So your net.
So my net comes down to $47,000
minus the cost of the title companies.
Dave, as the buyer in that example, he didn't have to come up from his 60 or 65, whatever number we used. It stays the same. That's what Dave is paying for the property.
Yep.
The wholesaler, their spread isn't affected either, because it comes out of the seller side. So the liens are cleared on the original
The title
purchase.
company finds them, and then they add them in to be paid at settlement, right? So next question comes to mind, Mike. Well, what happens if your offer is less than what they owe?
Well, that can be a problem. So
but it's not, though. It can be. Right.
So
and we do this all the time.
This comes up a lot when people are like, well, shoot, this person owes $70,000, and I can only pay $60,000 for the property. This will never work. Okay, great. Then don't make your offer, because I'll tell you what, Dave and I are going to come in. We're going to offer 60. We're going to clean up on these deals. It doesn't happen every time. It will not happen every time. But oftentimes,
sometimes
the seller. So let's go back to our example.
You owe 55.
Well, I owed,
and you, the listener, offered 50.
And we already agreed to it.
And you're like, I can't come up any. This is it. 50 grand. It's the most I can pay.
So the title company.
But if Mike really wants to sell,
they send me my settlement statement, and it says that Mr. Seller, to sell this house, you have to bring us a check for $5 grand. What?
Because you have to pay off the lien, the mortgage that's there, and if that number is greater than or equal to, really greater than, it's never equal to ever. If it's greater than, then the seller has to bring those proceeds to the table. Now, this happens actually quite a bit, right?
Dude, we had two back-to-back.
We had two in 1 week that they each brought like 40,000, 38,000 and 42,000, something like that, to the table to sell us a property. So this does happen actually quite frequently, right? So question number one I had was, what about the debts? Mm-hmm. Question number two was, what if those debts are higher than your offer? The next question would be, does it matter if it's a title company or a closing attorney?
No.
Why?
Next.
You don't like that question, do you? No, the reason is because each state's a little different, guys. Some states require an attorney. Other states have title companies. Other states have both. Typically, title companies are owned or affiliated with an attorney.
They all have
Not
attorneys.
always, but most of the time, they're owned by attorneys. So they're involved in the case. Mike and I are located in Missouri. In our state, there's both closing attorneys and title companies. We've used both. However, 99% of the time, we use a title company, and the title company facilitates the entire transaction. So next question that comes to mind. Why is it so important to use a title company? and I'm going to help you with this answer, but it has to do with a policy.
Okay. So
let me rephrase.
I got it.
Why is it required for Mike and I? We will never buy a property outside of a title company. We may sell one, but we will never, ever, ever, ever buy a property outside of a title company or a closing attorney.
It's even simpler than that, Dave. And I'll get to what you're talking about with the policy, because of the liens. I'd say it's the most simple question why we will never purchase a property outside a title company. We want someone to research the chain of title, research that property, and find out if there's liens attached to it. If we buy a property for $20,000 and we pay an individual $20,000 outside of a title company, and then we find out there's a $3 million lien against the property, well, guess what? We don't own that property. That person with the lien does. Because we aren't coming up with
title can't transfer.
It's not a clean title.
Properly, cleanly. And whenever you have a title transfer that was done incorrectly or wrong, it's going to slow down the buying or the selling of that property down the road. And whenever you go through a title company, and often closing attorneys may offer this as well, but they actually offer an insurance policy called title insurance, right? And that insurance policy protects you of any unfound encumbrances or liens, which is really just like mortgages or debts, could be judgments even, that are on that property. So when you go through a title company, not only are they ensuring that all the previous debts are going to be paid off and that the name on the record of that ownership transfers from them to you or you to someone else, but also they give you an insurance policy against that. So if anything was missed, unfound, overlooked, so on and so forth, you are covered to be able to sell that property. And it's the title company or closing attorney's job at that point to go clear those things that may have been forgotten. Now, it's pretty rare that stuff happens, that a title insurance policy is needed. But just like any insurance policy, guys, this is an investment, because if you get stuck with the property that you can't sell, then you're sitting on a massive liability right there. Money's going out. You can't sell it. Maybe you can't even rent it. Who knows? But, having the title insurance is very, very, very important. So the question that we have in mind here is, how do double closings work and how are the contracts set up? I think we've done a pretty good job of answering. You have an A to B contract and a B to C contract. You're in the middle. You line those up. That's how it works. Don't think that you need to know any more than that. Because again, if you hire a title company or a closing attorney and you have those two contracts, just bring them to them and they will help you get to the finish line. That is their job. Literally, you don't need to know anything else than what we've just talked about in the last 17 minutes in terms to double closing.
100%.
Just go find these people in your area.
I was going to say, I think the most important part that we skip over when we start getting into the details here of double closings and how you close is finding the deal. That's the most important part of wholesaling.
That's it.
Finding those deals, guys. Get out there and find the deals. Figure out the details on your way to the finish line.
And I think the point you're trying to make here is, guys, this is a great question to ask, but it's irrelevant if you don't have an A to B contract or a property under contract. You can't sell what you don't have. You can't mark up what you don't have. So this is a great point, Mike. So many times we get people questioning, sending over questions, and we encourage it. So if you're listening to this, send them over to us. Email, text, go over to Anchor. You can even do a voice message that will play on this podcast, right? But the question often is where do I start? And what if I don't know how to do this? Well, that's great. We want to teach you all those, and those are things that you need to learn. But none of that matters if you don't have a deal. And the best way to find a deal is to go market to motivated sellers. That's the number one thing. You don't even need to focus your time and energy on learning how to estimate repairs or even make offers if you don't have anybody to make an offer to or a property to try to determine those repairs. So start with marketing, and then from there, you can learn how to do the double closes down the road. It's a great question. I'm glad we talked about this, but I really want to take it back, guys. This is the marketing business. Do not forget that. In order to do anything in this business, you have to find a motivated seller, and then everything else will fall into place. Thanks for listening, guys. Signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Discount Property Investor Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to help us reach a wider audience. To jumpstart your real estate investing career, please visit freewholesalecourse.com, the most complete free course on wholesaling real estate ever. We would also appreciate it if you left us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Thank you in advance for your support, and remember, you make your money when you buy, and you get paid when you sell. Now let's go build some wealth.